Right. Our next talk will be given by Andy Mihalop. He'll talk about PPC in highly competitive markets. He's the head of digital at Money Supermarket, and this is a price comparison website for all of you who don't know. Yeah, Andy did some amazing stuff. He was head of search at global performance marketing agency iProspect. He was head of search at iLevel. He was a director of strategic services at DoubleClick, and he worked on some really nice brands. For example, Hewlett-Packard, Nokia, Orange, Disney, or Procter & Gamble. So enjoy his talk. Will be fun.
Thank you. Cheers, Alex. I hope everyone enjoyed their lunch. I've got to really work to keep you guys engaged now after lunch. So hopefully you've had some caffeine as well. I'll try and make it as interesting as possible. So what I really wanted to cover, is a little kind of paragraph on that first slide, but really talking about operating at scale with PPC and I guess biddable media more generally in really competitive markets. And really, I think there's a couple of things that I'd like to talk about this afternoon. Broadly about using technology, because in order to scale, technology is absolutely critical when you're talking about millions of keywords. The second thing is really being able to use data to make smart decisions. So, there's a lot of talk in the market about big data, but how do you really bring that to life and use that in PPC and also in other biddable media channels? Also just thinking about innovation. So if you're working in a competitive market, innovation is absolutely critical, whether that's, using some of the, the Google products that are being released, whether it's looking at Facebook, whether it's looking at Twitter. Innovation is definitely another kind of critical part. And that's really all about staying ahead of the competition. And what I really wanted to do is share our journey over the last kind of year, 18 months. So as Alex said, most of my background, last kind of 8 to 10 years have been agency. So this is the first time I've kind of been in-house trying to drive a lot of change within a business. So part of it is sharing that with you, hopefully giving you some kind of practical tips, stuff that you can take away and apply, in your own roles within your own business. So I thought I should kind of set up who Money Supermarket are, because we're unfortunately not in Germany, maybe one day. Got to avoid being copied. So essentially we're the UK's largest price comparison website. Annual revenue is about 181 million. We have 50 product channels. So they cover some really, really competitive markets like car insurance, for example, home insurance, finance, credit cards. We also have a local deals channel, so a kind of Groupon equivalent. And travel, again, is another big sector. So as you can imagine, it's quite a diverse range of product channels. So we have a performance media budget, which is about 40 million, and that's mainly spent in PPC today, starting to diversify now into other biddable channels, so social media advertising and also real-time bidding display. And we actually have quite a big in-house team, 50 people. Not all of them work in PPC or biddable media. There's a team of about 15, and the remainder work across SEO, across content, across digital PR, across social media. So it is quite a big team. So our challenge, pretty clear really. I've talked about the number of kind of product channels that we have. They're pretty diverse. 10 million keywords. It's not, in today's day and age, if you're an e-tailer, with hundreds of millions, it probably doesn't seem like a lot of keywords. But, it's still pretty big. So 400 campaigns, 5 million negatives at the last count. So it's interesting. And as I said, we work across some really competitive verticals. So, average cost per click for motor insurance in the UK is depends on your quality score, probably between £7 and £10. So it's pretty competitive. The other thing I think, is that's interesting is that our whole business model obviously is predicated on being able to acquire customers more cost efficiently than our direct competitors. So there's some other big price comparison sites in the UK, but also our commercial partners. So, we're paid on a CPA basis. We're pushing customers through to insurers and to banks, but they're also competing, obviously, in the paid search landscape. So it's an interesting dynamic. And lastly, I think it's just worth mentioning that Google have recently launched a price comparison product in the UK and in the US for credit cards and motor insurance. So again, that's another interesting dynamic. I won't go into too much detail about that, but again, it just shows that there is a lot of competition, and we have to be very smart to really stay ahead. So I just wanted to focus a little bit on how our worlds are changing. So if you guys essentially are working in PPC or biddable media today, there are some interesting changes. So, PPC essentially is kind of moving to biddable media. So there's obviously a Facebook platform. There are other biddable products that are emerging. RTB display, again, is experiencing significant growth. So it's quite interesting if you're a practitioner, because that actually offers quite a lot of opportunity. If you are working in PPC today, to expand your skill set into other areas, because we're used to essentially to an auction environment to buying based on data or in an auction environment. Secondly, it's about moving from search query volume and searcher intent, so just working in keywords, to really thinking about how we can leverage behavioral and customer data. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but again, how do we overlay customer data with search terms to really understand who sits behind that search, and how can we reach them and target them and communicate with them more effectively. We work on a final click model. We're moving away from it. That's probably a challenge for lots of people. Obviously, cross-channel measurement and attribution is important for lots of reasons, and again, I'll kind of touch on that a little bit. And then bid management. So you may have a bid management platform, a PPC technology platform, but actually, what about where that fits within a wider enterprise solution? Do you just need one platform? How do you get data into it? How do you integrate with other media channels? So our world is changing, and I think these are some of the challenges that we've had to think about in evolving how we operate in really competitive markets or verticals over the last year. So one of the first things that we had to look at was an enterprise solution. So when I started, we had one platform. We've changed that recently, and make no secret, we're working with Marin now, and that's a great relationship. At an early stage, but we had to think beyond that. So, it wasn't just a PPC bid management platform we needed. It was thinking about, okay, well, social media advertising, we're going to spend more money potentially in Facebook and invest and test that. And then what about display? What about the opportunity in real-time bidding, not just in terms of retargeting, but in terms of driving upper funnel activity? So that was another consideration. And then you start to think about it and think, well, hang on a sec, what about SEO? SEO is a critical channel for us. We need an SEO, an enterprise platform, to be able to manage millions of keywords, to be able to bring in different data sets and prioritize the opportunity, as well as understanding or being able to look at a keyword level across paid and natural search. And then you've got a website, and obviously in order to be able to track, you have to have a tag management solution. There's web analytics, conversion optimization to think about as well, attribution management, and then how do you manage your data? So do you need a data management platform, and can you get all of your data into an enterprise data warehouse, for example? And then finally, what about your competitor intelligence in search, or your market intelligence? So you start to see very quickly, when you start thinking about search or paid search and biddable media in the enterprise, it grows really, really quickly. So our approach, was really about defining business requirements, really critical. to make sure that you're capturing requirements across a lot of different teams. It was really about thinking of all the data sources and formats that we needed potentially to use, across our biddable media platforms. It was thinking about how we integrate platforms, think about defining KPIs, a simple thing, but actually at business level, quite difficult to do. For example, if you're looking at social media advertising, what are the metrics for that, or organic social versus paid search, for example. And then the other thing is, reporting. Where are you going to report? Where are you going to dashboard? Who needs to see that dashboard? Different levels within the organization want to see different data visualization. So the final thing was kind of coming up with an end state vision for this enterprise solution. And just another kind of note, be prepared to buy your chief financial officer a few beers, because you're going to be going to him, in most cases, asking for quite a significant investment. Getting on the right side of the CFO, I think, is always good. So this is what we actually built. Essentially, it's an interoperable digital marketing platform. And the idea really for us was about best of breed. So it was about working with best of breed technologies, being able to essentially integrate them together. And obviously there's a few technology companies you'll recognize there. First thing for us, unbelievably, was we didn't have a tag management solution. Fairly critical to being able to get tags in place and being able to measure. In terms of paid search, we started working with Marin. We've been using AdGuru. In terms of competitor intelligence. In terms of SEO, BrightEdge, LinkDex are both important platforms in terms of both understanding our backlink profile and link opportunities, but also managing the wider prioritization of natural search. Experian, again, Hitwise is a really important tool for us in terms of being able to understand what's happening in the marketplace in terms of our competitors. We use Brandwatch. That's more about listening to inform our content strategy. And then finally, kind of our real-time bidding display. There's been a lot of investment in that area. We see a big opportunity with the data assets that we have. So we're working with Criteo for retargeting, MediaMath and BlueKai. And that's really about leveraging our very deep data assets, both customer and behavioral data. Attribution management, again, I'll talk a little bit about, but we work with Odometry, which is a pure play attribution management platform. One thing just to bear in mind is when you're thinking about building this platform, it's really thinking about what you want. One option, obviously, is to go down the route of working with Google. Google are putting a huge amount of effort, time, and money into building out their stack. Many of you will realize they just released in the last week tag management. Also an enhancement to attribution management. So that's one option. As a business, we didn't feel comfortable with obviously Google launching in our space as well with sharing a lot of data. Adobe, again, are building out a similar stack. But it's really thinking about what's important for your business. And for us, we felt that interoperability was really important in terms of building out this technology. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about selecting a paid search platform because that was a really important decision for us when we were managing literally £40 million worth and obviously millions of keywords. And it really, I think, when you're thinking about bid management, there's three things. So firstly, it's about managing complexity. There are lots of media channels. It may not, there are obviously different search engines, Google, Bing, etc. But as I've already mentioned, it might be looking at Facebook. In the future, it might be looking at a Twitter API. It might be looking at working with Criteo for retargeting. There are lots of media channels. And part of the point in driving revenue is being able to leverage those media channels. The second thing is about gaining visibility and control, right? So, if you've got millions of keywords, lots of products, you really need to be able to get down to a granular level and use data to make smart decisions about optimization. And then finally, just about optimizing revenue outcomes. And again, that's really about applying really intelligent bid management. So I've already talked quite a bit about data integration reporting, so I'm not going to go into this in huge detail. But I think, again, the point is, if you're thinking about, not just about operating with PPC in a competitive market, you're thinking about actually how do I use biddable media to drive revenue and performance. It's thinking about, well, what are all the data sets that I need to get in? So, as an example, it might be data from an ad server, it might be analytics data from Google Analytics, it might be thinking about offline data. So we have a number of people, obviously with insurance products, that convert offline on the phone. So it's about how do we bring that sales data in as well, so we're able to make intelligent decisions about optimization. And one point that I just wanted to make, in terms of particularly thinking about PPC technology and overlaying technology, is really just thinking about the basics. You just can't afford to neglect those. It's really about optimizing an account structure. So when you're dealing with millions of keywords, that becomes difficult quite quickly. But it's really about having a campaign structure that will scale to 100% and that you can update frequently and accurately. Because if you do that, essentially you're going to maximize quality score out of the box, as opposed to trying to overlay a really sophisticated bid management solution on top of an account structure that's really poorly built and optimized. And I think the other thing is just thinking about the basics of mobile. So about 16% of our traffic comes through on a smartphone or tablet today. So again, it's about breaking out tablet, mobile, having those in separate campaigns and ad groups, optimizing for device, because the journey is different, the experience is different. But really critical to get the basics right still in terms of the account structure before you overlay technology. So again, just wanted to talk a little bit about bid management when you're working at scale with millions of keywords. What we found is that actually a hybrid approach works really, really well. So if you can imagine, for motor insurance, the average journey length is probably 3 to 5 days. So somebody gets an email, they're reminded their insurance is due, they come online, they search mainly on generic terms, it's a very short journey. Whereas for travel, it could be 30 to 50 days, and there's lots of tail terms as people refine. So what we've actually done very successfully is apply a hybrid approach. So for a lot of the head terms, for example, car insurance, or indeed for our brand keywords, we manage them manually in most cases, or apply a bid rule. For the mid and the kind of tail, which is especially applicable for travel, for example, we actually use portfolio-based optimization. And one of the great things with the portfolio piece is that you can build predictive models. So sometimes our goals are changing. We might be optimizing towards revenue. We might be optimizing towards gross profit or margin. It's very easy for us using predictive modeling to be able to actually say, okay, if we pull this lever on revenue, how does it impact gross profit, for example? But I think the key thing is really just thinking about how the journeys differ, and thinking about what's the smart way to apply technology. And in some cases, it's actually better to do it manually, and then perhaps use as I say, the portfolio optimization for the mid and the tail, because you can't millions of keywords in travel, for example, you would never be able to evidently manage manually. I did want to talk a little bit about mobile. I know Mark in the next session is going to talk more about mobile PPC, but you guys may have seen this. Apologies if it's a bit small. So Google released this fairly recently, just in terms of customer behavior, in terms of multi-screening. And there's some very key points, but 90% of activity is screen-based now, and 38% of that activity is actually on a smartphone. So may not be something new. We all know how important mobile is. I think what is really interesting is that 90% of consumers move between multiple devices to achieve their goals. And that's interesting because the thing that actually helps them move across device is search. So they might start their search, for example, on a smartphone or a tablet, and then they'll do another search on a desktop. So thinking about how you optimize paid search for mobile is really, really important, and part of that is just understanding people's behavior across those devices, how they use them. So again, it comes back to the basics of have a mobile optimized website. I know it's, again, something that we would expect today, but a lot of brands don't have a fully optimized mobile website. And I have to be honest, ours is still has some work. But it's really important, again, just to recognize the importance of mobile and best practice in terms of targeting devices, etc. I think the other thing is about knowing customers. So again, fairly obvious, we tend in search, in paid search, to focus very much on the keyword and on searcher intent. But what about going behind the keyword and thinking more about actually understanding the customer? And this is a kind of, a typical segmentation for Money Supermarket. You could call them personas, I guess. And what we've been doing is working with Experian in the UK and using Mosaic, so their kind of categorization of lifestyle, if you like, demographics, and overlaying search terms. So actually, we could understand, for example, George, who's potentially a motor customer. We understand what his search journey looks like and the sequence of searches that he makes. And we know quite a lot about George. So firstly, it's optimization on those terms, but secondly, it's thinking about what about the messaging that we can deliver, which may encourage kind of George to click on the ad and obviously come through to the Money Supermarket site. So it's really thinking about how you can use that data. And for example, we know that certain categories of really desirable customers might over-index in a certain region. Might be London or Manchester or whatever. So again, we can test geo-targeted campaigns to see if people basically respond better to that messaging in terms of not only click-through rate but also conversion. And I wanted to give you just a bit of an example really. So hopefully you can see this. So in this example, what we've been able to do is work out the average saving, right, for a customer in London. So in this case, 99% of Londoners save over £150. But we can do that for different locations. So say the average user in Birmingham or Manchester saves a certain amount. And again, it just allows us to really deliver some very targeted messaging to individuals based on some of the data that we have in terms of average savings. And again, it doesn't always work, but we have an ongoing process of where we're testing. The other thing is that we know certain groups of people most people are price sensitive. That's the whole point of price comparison. It's all about getting the lowest price. But there are certain groups of people that are particularly predisposed towards a particular brand in terms of an insurer, for example, or a particular bank. So if we understand that, again, we can reflect that in the messages to try and drive click-through rate and ultimately sales. So another thing really is just thinking about scale, particularly for paid search, is dynamic landing pages, because if you've got millions of search terms, you need to land that customer somewhere. And obviously, the more relevant the journey between keyword, ad copy, and landing page, firstly, you're going to get a better quality score. So there's an efficiency, which you multiply across millions of keywords. That mounts up very quickly. Obviously, it improves the user journey, and ultimately, it drives conversion as well. So you can see in this example, we've created basically pages for different types of car. So a Ford car, for example, there's a dedicated insurance quote for Ford car is the keyword. There's a dedicated ad copy, and then comes through to a dedicated landing page. And then second example, very similar, Ford Fiesta, motor insurance, very targeted, creative that lands on a page. All of these pages are dynamically generated, and obviously the important thing is to continually test. So we're A/B and multivariate testing on these pages all the time. Testing imagery, testing locations of buttons, etc., to try and maximize the actual conversion rate. But again, if you're going to operate paid search at scale, having dynamic landing pages is absolutely critical. So I always wanted just to touch on, talk to a lot about technology and data, but also it's thinking about how we can use that data in terms of driving retargeting. So again, that's a really important Really important consideration and an opportunity. So, what we're seeing in terms of biddable media, if you like, that real-time bidding, programmatic buying is growing. There's certainly a lot of talk about big data. So again, it's thinking about, if your paid search is all about harvesting demand, right? It's all about demand fulfillment. Part of it is thinking, well, okay, how can we improve that through retargeting? So in these examples, you can see there's a couple of examples actually. If somebody doesn't complete a full quote, but we know what car they're driving, we can retarget them with a dynamic creative. So have you insured your Opel Vectra, for example? If they've actually completed their quote, gone off and thought, what, we're going to do some more research, try some other price comparison sites, we can serve them a dynamic creative with the quotes that they'd already received. So just to give you an idea, that is giving us 100% ROI today. So it's picking up a lot of people because of the nature of price comparison that have come to us, gone off, and then come back. But again, it's also thinking about how to move up the funnel, thinking more about demand generation, using prospecting. So again, serving that kind of average savings message. And then finally, driving cross-sell. So, if someone's come to Travel Supermarket, our travel site, they've booked a holiday, we know they're going to New York, it might be likely that they need travel insurance. So it's just thinking about how to leverage that data through biddable channels, because it's a good opportunity. And again, attribution, just thinking about the display opportunity, particularly if you're using RTV display for prospecting. If you're looking at it on a final click basis, it's unlikely to cost in. So it's really now thinking, again, about attribution. I'm sure you guys will have seen many slides like this. And today we work on a final click basis, so we attribute 100% of the conversion value to the final click before the person clicks off to the insurer, which in this case is Admiral. And this is what we're moving to. So proper cross-channel attribution model. That model will probably look slightly different for channels, for motor insurance, for example, versus travel. But the key thing is that we are truly able to understand the value of a media touch point and make sure that we attribute the value back to it. So broadly, we're driving performance and efficiency from making smart decisions about the actual role of a media touch point. The other really nice thing with this is that actually we're able to take an attributed value at a keyword level. So Odometry, as I said earlier, is our essentially pure play attribution management platform. It applies an algorithmic layer in terms of being able to drive essentially the model. But what it allows us to do at a keyword level with paid search is take an attributed value and then feed that directly into Marin to automate bid management. That's great. It's seamless and works really, really well. So again, it's just thinking about integration, use of data. So other thing is just to think about building your own tools. One of the smartest hires I made was a guy that's an absolute Excel whiz. And when you're getting into sophisticated bid management tools, a lot of them have a lot of great functionality to improve the efficiency around workflow, for example. But they don't do everything. And sometimes there's really specific tasks that take people in the team a lot of time. So we build our own tools. There's just a couple of examples. Theme, for example, is a tool that we use to identify themes in search query reports for new keywords and negatives. Cruncher, and I don't come up with the names, basically takes a search query report and an AdWords editor, keyword downloads, identifies the searches matching to incorrect keywords, and then outputs the negatives for fast uploading to campaigns. So I guess, again, the message is here, employ someone that's really good with Excel, with SQL, with VB, for example, and get them to build tools, because they can save a huge amount of time, which means the team are often more focused on analysis of data, looking at actionable insight and then applying that in, through optimization to drive revenue efficiency. So got one minute, and then hopefully could take some questions. So just 5 key takeaways, really. I think, if you work in a vertical today that's really competitive, think beyond PPC. Think about the opportunity more broadly in biddable media, because, you have the skills as a PPC practitioner, and it's just thinking all the time about innovation. How can I use more biddable media touch points to connect with consumers and ultimately drive performance and efficiency? Thinking beyond just PPC platform is really important. So thinking about an integrated enterprise technology. How do you pull those platforms together? How do you get them to integrate, and how do you get data into them? How do you get that data out to actually optimize? PPC technology obviously is critical to scale, absolutely critical. If you're going to run campaigns with complex campaigns with millions of keywords, you need technology, smart technology, to be able to drive that. Data is really important, and obviously, yes, there are lots of different data types. So it might be competitor data, for example. It might be market intelligence data. It might be offline data, call data. It could be sales data. But it's, and obviously in the example I used, trying to get behind the keyword and thinking about customer data. Who's the customer behind the search? How do I connect with them? That's really important. And I think the final point, again, a pretty obvious one, that's not always easy in our industry because it's growing. It's hiring smart people. And the last point, democratize. I think it's an interesting one because one of the things that we've focused really hard on is the culture of the team. So rather than having a kind of typical corporate hierarchical structure, we just invert it, and basically all of the guys that are working day to day to drive essentially performance and revenue are really empowered to make their own decisions. My job, working with the team is to help empower them, by making sure they have access to data and technology. But it's an interesting point around culture in terms of really empowering people to do great work. So thank you. I think I'm on time, just about.
All right, thank you, Andy. We have 10 minutes left for taking questions. So, yeah, who's got one?
So we have a bit of a history of building stuff in-house. So again, the solution we use for dynamically generating pages is an in-house solution. In terms of A/B and multivariate testing, we're actually working with Web Trends Optimize. So Web Trends is our web analytics provider. So we're using Optimize for A/B and multivariate testing, but it's an in-house solution for dynamic generation of landing pages. Yeah, so that's a great question. In some cases, yes. In other cases, no. And part of that is really understanding the purpose of the page. A lot of the pages, where we separate them, it's really because that page has to be particularly content rich, has to be updated on a regular basis, obviously to rank well in natural search. Whereas some of the PPC pages that are generated, we know that their purpose is just to get people into the journey. So it's striking that balance of, a really informative page that helps move, but perhaps that's at a stage early in the journey that moves somebody down the funnel to the next stage. So in some cases, yes, depends on the keyword. In other cases, no. If it's a keyword that we know people are using because they're towards the end of their journey or at the bottom of the funnel, it tends to just be a very well optimized paid search which is really just get them to click through and start the quotation process. So probably relatively low today. I would say it's probably only 10%. So we've been trying different things. So we've been doing testing some remarketing, some text ads. We've been doing some image ads as well. I don't know if you guys are aware. I mean, Google have just also launched essentially their kind of search remarketing product, which essentially means if somebody types in a query, served a paid search ad, comes through to the website, for example, goes off, and then comes back essentially to AdWords, they can be retargeted based on their behavior. So you've got to have tags on your site. But that's really interesting, and I know I've gone off on a slight tangent, because what it means is if somebody's come through to the site, started their motor quotation, and then abandoned, based on what we know, we can change the messaging within the ad and possibly bid higher, because we know that person has started the journey and has a higher propensity to buy. So that's quite an interesting. I don't know if it's launched in Germany. I know in the UK it has in the last couple of weeks. But yeah, in terms of GDN, continue to test it, but it's not a huge amount of our budget. Again, it's a great question because there's many different approaches. And we have a team of data scientists. So today, those guys are doing a lot of the work around the models, the modeling. Again, one size definitely doesn't fit all, and because the journeys across each of those products is very different. So that's definitely a consideration. What we're currently looking at is applying an algorithmic approach, which is part of the solution within odometry. So obviously you can select a predetermined model, you can have a custom model, you can apply an algorithmic model. And part of it is really for us probably applying different models to different channels to be able to measure the impact. I think the key thing is, again, you've got to have analysts, and we've invested in a very smart kind of data science team who one of their jobs is looking at media attribution. One of the other jobs is understanding and analysing a lot of the customer data that we have and being able to bring that insight out so we can operationalise it across media channels. Yeah. So again, very much depends on the product. Brand is very important for us because we spend kind of probably £30 million annually on TV, and every single other price comparison site is bidding on our brand. So we do invest quite heavily in brand. For example, for motor insurance, it's nearly all generics, expensive generics, because that's the way that people search. Whereas you get into travel, and again, a lot of generics, but a lot of kind of mid and tail terms. Whereas in motor insurance, for example, they're very much just head terms: car insurance, motor insurance, cheap car insurance. It's a very, very kind of short journey. So the majority of, when I look at how we invest that 40 million, a lot of that is obviously going into pretty expensive generics because they're actually important keywords. I think the other thing that's interesting also is that we have seen in the UK a decline in search query volumes. So I think from memory, generic searches for motor insurance have dropped about 11% over the last year. And for credit cards, they've actually come down, I think it's in the region of 27%. So it's interesting that in some cases, we're actually seeing search query volumes declining, which is also a reason for kind of looking at other biddable media channels, because we still need to be able to connect to consumers and obviously get them through to our site to convert them.
All right, more questions? Anybody? Okay then, Andy, thanks for your talk. Yeah, we're glad to have you here. So yeah, give him a warm applause. Thank you.
Thank you.